A pleasant and a good Friday, everybody. It's October 16th, 2020, and as we head on into this new weekend coming on up, it's cut in half. Cut in half in many ways. The weather is going to be sort of good one day, not as good the next, and depending on where you are in the region, temperatures are going to vary widely, and weather conditions are going to be really different based on where you're watching and listening to this podcast. If you're in more of a northern part of Wyoming into Montana or South Dakota, it's going to feel like winter all weekend and into early next week. If you're watching this podcast in Utah or the western slope of Colorado, you really won't notice the weather being any different. If you're along the front range of Colorado, you're going to say Saturday is going to be a really nice day in the 70s, and all of a sudden on Sunday it's going to be 20, 30 degrees colder. So there's a lot going on. The cold air mass that's associated with this pattern is just going to continue to oscillate north and south as the jet stream is getting stronger. There's a big mass of cold air in Canada. It's wanting to push south, but at the same time, the jet stream is too straight in a line to really cause a big plunge of the cold air south, at least just yet. Now, we're also going to see precipitation in the northern areas. There could be some accumulations of snow this weekend in parts of northern Wyoming, parts of the western Dakotas, parts of Montana, Yellowstone Park, the Tetons, the Bighorns of Wyoming, and the mountains of southwest Montana, all going to see some pretty decent snowfall. But then as you get a little bit further south, it'll feel like, well, just like the warm, dry fall we've had so far. And this is why. This is the current pattern for today. This is where we are as of this afternoon. You can see the jet stream is making a long trip from the northwest to the southeast, from British Columbia up in southeast Alaska here, pushing southeast. We have a vortex of really cold air central over north central areas of Canada, and we've got the ridge of high pressure in the right place to keep that northwest flow into the United States. And we talked yesterday about where you are in this boundary, that the intersection between the red and the brown really delineates the much colder air to the north and the warmer air to the south. So that's kind of what you want to watch for as we go through these charts to show you where it's going to be going. If you look at the shape of the jet stream, we have this heart-shaped like pattern that's showing a lot of cold air in Canada wanting to penetrate south. Now, what will happen a lot in October is you'll get these penetrations that carve out deep troughs like this. And honestly, that should happen, but the computer models do not want to show that, as it keeps more of a straight flow like this through the weekend and into early next week. Now, to highlight the changes in temperatures and conditions, anywhere you see blue or green, it's going to be cold. Anywhere you see bright colors like orange or yellows or reds, that's where it's going to be warmer than normal. These are our temperatures relative to normal by this afternoon. So you can see the cold air is locked up in the Dakotas, up into Montana, and the rest of this region's pretty warm. But by Saturday afternoon, there's a pretty good advancement of cold air south. Now, it doesn't get into Colorado by tomorrow afternoon, but it's back into Nebraska, northern Wyoming, and along the Continental Divide, west of the Divide. You can still see how it stays warm. By Sunday noon, whoa, that cold air pours all the way back south. Pretty darn cold up here in Montana. That's really cold air. But along the divide, you can see the Continental Divide is going to be holding up. It's going to be holding up that cold air. West of the Divide, just a real snoozer. Nothing else is going to be going on. Now, by Monday, the cold air retreats back to the north again. The best analogy is like waves on the beach. A wave comes in, rolls up the beach. The wave would be the cold air. Then the wave retreats. You're back to sand or the warmer conditions, and this kind of this back and forth continues. So Monday it warms up, Sunday it cools down, Saturday is in between, today pretty warm. So you can see those fluctuating conditions and temperatures. So if you're west of the divide, there's just really not much going on. But for Montana, northern Wyoming, western South Dakota, and parts of northern Nebraska, well, it's going to get a lot more interesting. Now, this is the pattern for Monday. Notice there's not a lot of difference here. We still have the winds aloft generally coming in from a northwest direction, moving on through, but the red line is pushed up a little bit more up towards northern Wyoming, and we still have this high pressure ridge here. As long as this ridge is here, the door to the cold is open. It's just a matter, is the door open widely and the cold air just spills into all of the western United States, Or is the door open only a little and the cold gets directed more this way? Both solutions are possible, but the computer modeling right now is wanting to open the door to the real cold air later next week, more into that part of the country. But we're not sold on any solution just yet. This is what the precipitation looks like through Monday. It's pretty darn impressive up here. There's better than an inch of water up into the Bitterroot of Idaho. Some good snow up into Yellowstone Park. Hunters, if you're going to be headed up into the Wind Rivers, the Absarokas, the Beartooths, the Bighorns, even look at the Black Hills. There's a goodly amount of moisture lined up. You notice the trend. It's because it's right underneath those jet stream winds aloft and where the cold air is. You can see that as the cold air penetrates west, it does bring some showers to areas east of the divide and along the divide, but nothing can get west of the divide. This is what the snowfall looks like. Pretty impressive snow totals over time, especially in south central and southwest areas of Montana. But as we mentioned, if you're going to be hunting this weekend up into the Bighorns, up into northwestern areas of Wyoming, be ready for winter. If you're down here, well, yeah, you'll have some up and down in temperatures, but we're going to continue to have some really dry, nice autumn conditions. Now, this is by next Tuesday night and Wednesday. Not a lot is changing. And then that means that, let me go back to that chart there real quick. What I want to show you here with this pattern is that the pattern basically is coming from the northwest to the southeast again, but that high pressure ridge is still in the eastern Pacific. If this little disturbance back here ends up coming more south along the Pacific coast, the middle to the end of the week could get a lot colder here. If it stays directed more eastward, it's the Great Lakes by next weekend that gets cold and wintry and stormy. So stay tuned. We'll update you on Monday with what the long-range forecast is going to look like. But as we've talked this week, long-range forecast right now really suspect out past 4 to 5 days. Have a great weekend, everybody. We'll talk to you on Monday.